Shawn, before we even get started, we got to talk about cicadas. Boy, big
Okay.
story. They're they've got the map. They're talking. This is serious stuff on cicadas. But anyhow, good afternoon to you. Before we
Good
get started,
afternoon.
all right.
Yes,
I know
yes.
you've got several things to talk about. Ticks and mosquitoes that you discovered. But
Yeah.
before we go there, let's talk here briefly about the noise, the noise and the news of cicadas.
Yeah, it's time for them to start coming out, and I think the 13 and the 17-year cicadas are coming out this year up in the Raleigh area and up along I-40 going towards Charlotte.
And in Ohio and Illinois and
and
those areas.
several other places.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they aren't down here at the coast. So most of the listening area here, I don't think is going to have to worry about it.
I love the term listening area because I was intrigued by a story I read that said that the noise in a wooded area from cicadas could actually damage your hearing, that it can be very loud.
Yeah, the decibel level can be very loud when
That's
you get all
amazing.
of those insects going at the same time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we look for 13 years from today being 24, so it'd be 37 or thereabouts, or 17 years.
Yeah.
Okay. 41.
Right.
2041, 2034, 2041, somewhere in that time.
I don't think we get those ones, but down in this area, but we do get some every year cicadas, and then we get every once in a while, I think we get a 5 or a 7-year cicada that
Right.
comes out.
Yeah, and I remember a couple of years back there was a lot of volume on cicadas, and it's
Yes.
interesting. The cicadas seem to go from just before sunset, in other words, before the sun hits the horizon, and continues until for a period of time after the sun has set, and then I guess they respond to, and I don't know that you're an entomologist in your trade, but I think that's the right term.
That's the correct term.
Bug eaters, bug lovers, whatever. But the fact is that apparently light has an effect on their noise making, which I think is associated with trying to find mates. Am I correct?
Yeah, the noise is to find a mate or to attract a mate, and they are usually right at dawn and right at dusk, a little bit before, a little bit after. So that's usually when you hear all the noise from the cicadas.
I hadn't thought about dawn, and I went back when I was running. I don't remember, but then again. Another story. You're running hard trying to catch your breath, so you're not thinking about what you're listening to. Yeah. All right. So the big cicada onslaught is taking place here shortly.
Yes, it's if they haven't started already, they will be soon.
Okay. But the other interesting thing, I saw the question, and I never bothered to find the answer. Will the cicadas draw more snakes, particularly copperheads? Do you have any knowledge of the connection there by any chance?
Well, as the cicadas are coming out, they're down there on the ground where the snakes can get to them.
Okay.
But once they come out and they molt and come out of their
Shell.
exoskeleton and they have wings, they fly up into the tops of the tree. So
Okay.
unless it's a snake that climbs up in the tree like a green snake, they're not likely to be able to get to them.
Okay. All right. So just talking about cicadas, I thought I'd get started on that. Well, since we are talking about bugs, apparently
Insects. We're gonna talk about
it's
insects.
Insects. I'm sorry. Apparently, you have found some.
Right after we talked last week about
Coincidentally,
ticks,
yeah, coincidentally.
I got a tick on me the very next day and had to get that off. One important thing about tick bites is that it takes them, if they have a virus to transmit, it takes them at least 12 hours of being attached before it transmits the virus.
That is an important story.
Right. So even if you get bit by a tick, unless it's been on there for 12 hours, you should be able to get it off without getting infected. The other key factor is if you have a pill bottle or a vial, put some alcohol in it, stick that tick in there. If you start having some symptoms of some kind of disease, take the tick with you to the doctor so that they can check and find out what kind of tick it is and was it carrying a disease.
Again, we're talking with Shawn Banks of Carter Cooperative Extension Agency. And by the way, I'm not trying to get into the medicine or the medical issue here, but obviously everybody knows about, I say everybody, thinks about Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
Right.
Are there other tick? Well, there's Lyme disease or deer ticks. Am I
Right.
correct?
Lyme disease from deer ticks, and there are some ticks that carry a virus that creates an allergy to red meat.
That's exactly right. I remember that now that you mentioned that. Okay. obviously, there are a variety of ticks. Let's talk about the process for removing a tick. Is there using tweezers? You want to get the head, do you not?
You definitely want to get the head. I read there's a website called Tick Encounter.
Okay.
And on Tick Encounter, they sell this little wire device that you put around the base of the tick and move it up towards the head. And then it comes to a point, and it's kind of a loop, but it comes to a point, kind of like that thing that my mom used to use to thread her needles when she couldn't see anymore. And so you pull that through there, and it comes in contact with the tick's proboscis or mouth parts that are sticking in you, and then you can pull it up that way. And that way you're not pulling the body off of the head and leaving the head attached to you. You can pull the mouth parts and everything out with that little device. The problem with using a pair of tweezers is a lot of times you grab hold of the body and you squeeze the body and you leave the head on there. And that's not what you want to do, because it can still transmit the virus if the head is still attached.
Okay, and then the other aspect, treat the area with alcohol?
Definitely treat the area with alcohol. Make sure that you clean that off. You don't want it to get infected.
Right. Okay. Then you had other encounters, apparently.
I did. I was out yesterday walking around with the master gardeners. We were getting some education on how to grow flowers in a flower nursery here in Carteret County. We were at 2B's farm, and she was talking to us, Tanya was talking to us about how she grows the flowers and how she got started and some of the exciting things that she's doing with that. And she has a pond there, so mosquito heaven. And I got bit by mosquitoes. I thought I had put mosquito repellent on really good, and evidently I missed a couple spots, and I got a couple of bites right above my elbow on the back of my arm.
Yeah, he's the only one who got bit. So obviously, all right, wait a second. You said something, mosquito heaven?
Well, mosquitoes like stagnant water. And because she has a pond there that she's irrigating out of, it is stagnant water. She doesn't have an aerator right there. So anytime you have stagnant water, that can be a bird bath. It can be a ornamental pond that doesn't have an aerator or a fountain to it, or it can just be it can just be a puddle or water in a saucer under a plant. So anytime you've got some stagnant water, that's usually where the mosquitoes like to breed.
What kind of time frame are we talking about? And again, I know you're not an entomologist, so I'm asking a question you may not know, but I'm just wondering, is there a length of time after which you say, okay, that water is stagnant?
You really should, as the temperatures get warmer, change the water. For example, in a bird bath, really needs to have that water changed every 3 to 5 days.
Okay.
It takes approximately 5 days to go from an egg to a larva that's getting ready to hatch.
Okay. All right. I think that's an important story, too. And, of course, we're going into mosquito season.
We are going into mosquito season. So if you do have a stagnant pond that you like to have, like water lilies and stuff like that in, there are little things like mosquito dunks or mosquito bits. There's a couple other items that you can use. And what they have is they have a Bacillus thuringiensis, which is a bacteria that attacks those fly larvae. And incidentally, if you're in an office and you have a problem with fungus gnats that are flying around because the soil in your potted plants stays a little bit moist, you can put the little bits in there and water that in, and that bacteria will take care of the fungus gnat larva as well.
Okay, now this bacteria, right?
Right.
If you've got a bird bath, though, does it in any way provide a threat to the birds?
No, the bacteria is specifically targeted to go after fly larvae, so mosquitoes and fungus gnats, any other flies that breed in water or wet locations, it would go after those. But it's not going to do any damage. I mean, you could drink the water with the BT in there. Not that I'm suggesting that.
No.
But you could, and it wouldn't bother you either.
Well, of course, you've also got frogs and lizards who would be enjoying the larva.
Correct.
But you need to have them standing by all the time.
Right. Yeah. And there are some fish that feed on the mosquito larvae.
Right.
I think they're called mosquito fish. I don't know why, but there's a technical name for them as well. But you can put those in the pond and they'll feed on that, but they're not going to get all of the larvae.
You know, that does lead to a statement, and I don't know that this is necessarily accurate, but you've got a lot of drainage ponds for commercial use, obviously.
Right.
So it would be beneficial then, I'm thinking, for those property owners who have those commercial drainage ponds to go ahead and periodically put this bacteria in the water?
Yeah, if they would put that in there once a month, then they would be able to drastically cut down on the mosquitoes, especially in those ponds right next to a big parking lot.
Right, yeah.
If they throw a couple of those big rings in there and just let them take care of the mosquito larvae, that would be a great blessing to me when I have to go shopping just at dusk.
Yeah, right. Well, and plus the fact it's you. But when you're shopping, we want to know so we can be with you so that we don't get attacked.
Yes.
Again, we're talking with Shawn Banks, who's a beneficial target. Again, another benefit of the Cooperative Extension Agency here in Carteret County. He's attracting all the nasty critters, so we won't have to deal with them. I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome.
But I think that's an important story related to those. There are some large ponds out there, and now any major development, commercial development, has to have an area for stormwater.
Yes.
That water does sit there and become stagnant with time, unless
Yes,
it's a
it
heavy
does.
rain and something of this nature. Real quickly, before we go to the break, after a heavy rain, does that in fact regenerate the water in some way to reduce the stagnation, or what?
Well, if it has an outlet, it'll help move the water along.
will?
And you've got the water coming in. But once the rain stops washing down in there, it becomes stagnant again, and so the larvae are going to start feeding again.
Plus the fact it's carrying with it all sorts of silt and things of this nature.
Right.
So, all right, the critters, the mosquitoes, and as much as well, funguses and things of this nature.
Mhm.
Any challenges you're hearing from your constituency?
I have not had a whole lot of calls. The calls that I've had this week is how do I control the mosquitoes and keep them from being on my property. And one of the things you can do is empty all that standing water.
Right.
So if you have, not that it's rained a whole lot in the last couple of weeks, but if you have standing water inside a tarp that's covering a boat or a plant saucer, anything that's holding water, and it doesn't take a whole lot. The mosquitoes can breed in 2 tablespoons of water, so it doesn't take very much. So anything that's holding water, just empty that at least once a week, and get your neighbors to do the same thing. That's not going to get rid of all the mosquitoes, but that reduces the breeding sites, and hopefully that will reduce the number of mosquitoes that we have this year as well.
Okay, and now, of course, we've just got to make mention of the fact there are mosquitoes and there are mosquitoes, and we have a lot of marsh mosquitoes.
Yes.
That's nothing you can do about that.
Well, we got the marsh mosquitoes, and then we've also got the black flies and the yellow biting flies, and
Mayflies.
yeah, we got those coming around too. So
Yeah.
it's
Now, are mayflies, are they predominantly in the month of May?
well, mayflies. The term, the way I learned mayfly, it's actually not a biting fly. Mayfly is actually a little fly that you can use for fishing in freshwater. But there are usually during May the black flies that
Is that
do
what that
bite.
is? Yes, they do. And they come in pairs.
Well, they usually where I was out there in the down east area watching the pretty flowers, they weren't just in pairs; they were in groups of 5 and 6
Yeah,
and
they
7.
are.
And
Right. Yeah. But when they target, when they have a target, they tend to pair up. I know because I unfortunately have been a target on occasion.
I had 3 or 4 of them coming after me. Maybe it was 4. Maybe
And
they were in groups of 2.
And they were in groups of 2, and they will follow you. Once they've got a target, they hone in on it.
Yes, once they find something that smells yummy to them, they
Is
do
that what
go
it
after it.
is? Is it?
I don't know if it's a heat signature, if it's a smell that goes off, but for some reason they just kept following me around. There was one other master gardener that couldn't get rid of them either, so evidently I wasn't the only one.
And they're
with sweet
brave.
blood.
They want to be right in front of your face.
Right in front of your face or right under your neck.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
So, all right. So we got mayflies, we got mosquitoes and ticks. What else is happening in the world of gardening and plants and trees and shrubs?
Well, I wanted to make mention. I saw this in an email earlier this week. It's this week is International Compost Awareness Week.
I'm really.
It's amazing the things that they want to make you aware of, right?
Okay, compost. All right. Well, then let's have some fun with compost. What are the different forms of compost?
Well, the compost can be any organic matter that's going to be broken down. So a lot of times when you go to a garden supply store where they sell bulk compost, you just go up and you ask for compost, and they say, okay, do you want turkey compost? Do you want cow compost? or do you just want yard compost? Those are the three big ones that are generally sold. You can also make compost out of your kitchen scraps, and that goes really well for helping your vegetable garden.
That I can appreciate. What exactly is yard compost?
Yard compost is if you live inside the city limits here in Morehead City, and I'm sure there's other municipalities that do the same thing. When we trim our bushes, we put it out on the road, and they go collect it, and it has to go somewhere. Here in Carteret County, also in Craven County, and I think in Pamlico County as well, the Coastal Environmental Partnership, who's also doing the household hazardous waste cleanup on May 11th at the health department here in Carteret County. They collect all that, or it's all taken to their facility in Tuscarora. They chip it up into smaller pieces. They pile it up in windrows, and they let it heat up, and then they turn it, and they let it heat up until it stops heating up to between 165 and 180 degrees. That temperature is where it kills a lot of the weed seeds, a lot of the pathogens that are in there, and then once it stops heating up to that temperature, and it's once it's not heating up to that temperature, they can then take it and take it to one of the sites where they sell it back to the public.
Okay, let's talk here about the fact that I take my yard waste, my clippings, for example, and I put it around my shrubbery and things of this nature. It's not been heated up. Do I have a problem then with the weeds and possibly the pathogens in it?
If there are pathogens that are on those clippings, then yes, you might have a problem with that. Generally, your grass clippings are not going to have pathogens that are going to affect other plants that are in the in your yard. So generally, that's not a problem. They will continue to break down. They will release the nutrients. They also, if they haven't been composted, they will act as a mulch to keep the water in the soil as well.
Okay, good clarification. What is the difference between mulch and compost?
Compost has been broken down to where it's not going to heat up. It's not going to break down. Also, if it's a mulch that's organic mulch, it may take a little bit of the nitrogen away from the soil as the microbes start to break down the carbon. They need nitrogen in order to do that, so they may take a little bit of nitrogen away from the soil. So you don't generally want to put fresh wood chips around your plant unless you add some extra nitrogen to that, so that the nitrogen still gets to the trees and shrubs and whatever else you're mulching around.
Now, that's a topic I've never heard before. So nitrogen, if I'm putting down, this is mulch, not compost, mulch.
Right.
I've got to be aware of the fact that the mulch will, in fact, potentially, as if it's breaking up or breaking down, will extract from the ground nitrogen.
If it's fresh wood chips, yes, it will. If it's bark breaks down so slowly that you're not going to notice any nitrogen being taken away from the soil. But fresh wood chips, where they've cut the limbs out of a tree and then they've chopped it up, put it in the back of the truck, and then they bring it to your property and they drop it off and you spread it around the trees. At that point, yes, you would need to add some nitrogen so that it doesn't the microbes don't take nitrogen away from the plant.
I'm going to ask the question: which is better, compost or mulch?
That depends on the use that you're trying to put it to.
Okay.
If you're wanting to add some organic matter to the soil to help nutrify that so that it holds the water better than the sandy soil does, or if you have a clay soil, which we don't have a whole lot, but we do have a little bit around here, the organic matter that's the mulch will help to loosen that clay up so the water gets absorbed into the clay a little bit better. So if it's for adding the organic matter to enrich the soil, then you want to use compost. If it's for keeping the moisture in and shading out the weed seed, the mulch will work really well for that because it's going to be a little bit thicker or a little bit bigger chunks, so it's going to allow the water to flow through and the air to come back out.
Let's talk about pine straw here for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, pine straw, does it break down like other mulch?
Pine straw does break down, and depending on how it's used, it could break down pretty quick. I know in some areas where you apply it, when I was doing landscaping and putting out mulch, one thing that we had to do with pine straw is we had to refresh it every 6 months. If we didn't, then by the end of a year, it was completely gone, and we would put down enough to put a 2 to 3 inch layer of pine straw.
Okay, and we're getting off the issue of compost, but I want to talk about that with mulch very quickly before we wrap it up. If you've got pine straw down, do you need to pull away the old pine straw? Do you need to mix it in with the new pine straw? What does it matter?
You can just put it right down on top of the old pine straw. The old stuff's that just discolored and it's going to break. It's pretty much broken down anyway.
Okay. Can you put compost on top of mulch?
Yes, you can put compost on top of mulch. Usually what's going to happen if you do that, you don't want to put a whole lot of compost on top of mulch, because what's going to happen is it's going to eventually wash down through the larger chunks of the mulch, get down to the soil, and then the soil critters like the earthworms and the beetles that live in the ground and the grub worms and everything like that, they're going to work that organic matter from the compost down into the soil, so you don't have to till it in.
Okay. So if you've got mulch down, such I'm thinking, say pine straw, it doesn't hurt to put compost on top of that.
Right. You don't want to put a thick layer, but you could put like a quarter-inch layer of compost on top of that, and it'll work its way down through the pine straw.
As we wrap it up, should you water it more as a result, or does it matter?
You wouldn't have to water it more, because the mulch or the compost that you're putting on top of the mulch is going to help hold the water into the soil as well.
Okay.
So it shouldn't require any more watering than what you would normally put out.
Okay, so we've heard here on Coastal Gardener that this is compost.
International Compost Awareness Week.
International Compost. Oh,
Awareness.
It's got to be International Compost. Oh, that's even better. All right.